Fabulous. Factoring completely. Go ahead and bubble it. Okay. There you go. And put the star. Put the star above that fourth. You already wrote it down, so put the star above the last variable. Here's what you need to know. Okay. The only difference between factoring by grouping and factoring completely, which is why we put the star Focaroonies, okay, is that the last term has a variable, okay? If you look at the factoring by grouping examples we just did, there was no variable with the fourth term, okay? So factoring completely will still have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, but the fourth term, we will have a variable there, and that's what will differentiate between the two. Okay, so, and factoring completely is so similar to factoring by grouping, only we just have one additional step. Okay, so 2 steps. Step 1. Step 1, which we already know how to do, everybody write GCF. Factoring out the GCF of all 4 of those terms. So watch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so that's the only difference, and then from here down, you factor by grouping. Hopefully the connections are happening in the brain cells, okay? And we are seeing the, similarities, connections, and, it's becoming easier for you. So when you look at all 4 of those terms, what do all 4 of those terms have in common?
Q.
4. They're all multiples of 4. And then correct Q, okay? So let's fill in the leftovers, okay? So 4Q times what gives me 4Q to the 4th? Q to the 3rd power. 4Q times what gives me negative 8Q to the 3rd power, negative 2Q squared, because 1 plus 2 is 3. 4Q times what gives me a positive 12Q squared, positive 3Q, because 1 plus 1 is 2. And then 4Q times what gives me a negative 24Q, negative 6. Okay, so you guys, from this point forward, we're just factoring by grouping, which you already know how to do. So split it down the center. Okay, now take a look here. This is what we have never had before. Okay, and you're thinking like, what are we going to do with the 4Q? This is what we're going to do. Watch. Circle it. Draw the arrow. Bring it down. Okay, it's going to be part of our answer in the end. It's not going anywhere. I didn't forget it. Put it in the hip pocket. Okay, and it's not going anywhere. But students forget to bring it down. Okay, but don't. This is factoring completely. So all we have to do is what you already know how to do. Now we're just factoring by grouping. We split it down the center into 2 groups, and here we go. So what do both of these terms have in common? Q squared, because you have to use the lowest exponent. And Q squared times what gives me Q to the 3rd power, Q, because, 2 plus 1 is 3. And Q squared times what gives me negative 2Q squared, negative 2. And now let's look at our second binomial here. They both have 3 as a multiple. 3 times what gives me 3Q, Q. And 3 times what gives me a negative 6, negative 2. So here we go. Bring down your 2 GCFs. Okay, Q squared, positive 3. And then our 2 binomials here match. So we have Q minus 2. And there's our 4Q, you guys. The 4Q has to be put right in the front. This is the only new part that we haven't seen yet. Okay, and this whole thing is your answer. And that is factoring completely. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, dude, cut it off.